Someone once told me that there is no way to justify the use of I could care less. And while I used to agree with that rather brash, narrow-minded view of this particular language oddity, I have since repented. So without further ado, allow me to present a case for I could care less. The first argument of the prosecution states, saying I could care less doesn't make sense logically. If you mean I don't care at all, then it is logically incorrect to say I could care less, which would imply that you at least care somewhat. In order to prove this argument, you would have to prove that the English language must always make sense, and that there is no room in English for phrases that do not make sense. And that would be impossible to prove. An idiomatic expression is, by definition, an expression whose meaning cannot be inferred by the definitions of the words that make it up. Or in simpler terms, an idiomatic expression is an expression that doesn't make sense literally. And English is full of them. For example, to pull someone's leg doesn't mean you're going to physically grab someone's leg and pull it, even though the combination of the meanings of all the words in the phrase would suggest just such an action. Any native speaker of English would tell you that to pull someone's leg means to trick or deceive someone in a playful way, a definition that is not at all based on the definitions of the words that comprise the phrase itself. If someone gets cold feet before a wedding, you don't buy them a pair of socks. If a decision is up in the air, you don't wait for it to fall. If someone has bitten your head off, there's no need to go to a doctor to have them sew it back on again. Languages are full of idiomatic expressions, and it's precisely the wealth of idiomatic expressions that exist in any given language that make them so hard for non-native speakers to learn. I submit that I could care less is an idiomatic expression like any other, which doesn't have to make sense in order for it to be a valid way to express an idea, so long as the other speakers of the language understand the meaning of said expression. Which brings me to the second argument of the prosecution. Using I could care less to mean that you don't care at all causes confusion. While this argument does have some validity because idiomatic expressions must be understood by the speakers of the language and must be something that native speakers actually say, I have never, ever misunderstood someone when he or she says, I could care less. And I submit that all the English prescriptivists out there have never misunderstood it as well. It is precisely because they do understand what someone means that they're so annoyed when someone gets it wrong. When we speak, we don't rely solely on the definitions of the words in a sentence and how they relate to each other in order to extract meaning. We use the tone of the speaker, his or her body language, and not to mention the context of the conversation, along with an internal knowledge of the rules and exceptions of grammar, and an incredible memory bank of idiomatic expressions in order to understand someone's utterance. And we generally accept that any given utterance need not be logical in order to be understood. And now the final argument of the prosecution. It's wrong! It's just wrong! Just check out my video on prescriptivism. Until next time, I couldn't care less that you could care less.